So I wondered that myself when I was given the topic to talk about. So one of the things I did was email colleagues at Force 11. Force 11 is a network organisation for changing the way that we do scholarship, the future of scholarship. And within hours, I had enough material to write a dissertation on the topic. And so I sort of distilled down this material, my own thoughts, into sort of three areas. How do we do the pipelining of publications? So traditionally, publications have been filter in silence or quietly, invisibly, non-transparently, then publish, and then read, potentially forget. Whereas post-publication peer review is this idea of publish and then filter or examine or prioritise or have a discussion around it. And of course, what really comes out is there's a hybrid of potentially filter, then publish, and then go through another phase where one is looking at really examining the paper in the wider context with a bigger community to filter it again or to test it for its soundness and reproducibility, or to be able to prioritise it in some way, or even apply new metrics to collections of people rating it or commenting on it in order to be able to push it up or make it more visible. So it's an issue to do with visibility. The second point is that really has to come up in post-publication peer review is, what is peer review? What is the point of it? And as soon as you're thinking about post-publication peer review, it's not about gatekeeping about whether the paper goes into a journal and is received by the community. It's once it's received, how reproducible is it? How reusable is it? Was it actually an innovation in all of the areas that it's related to? So what could be innovative in one field is actually routine in another, so you get a wider view of it. Is it now open to, are the reviews rather commentary rather than acceptance? So that's the review is doing a different job than gatekeeping. And then finally, the other area was the openness of the reviews. So once things are post-publication peer review, you are clearly doing reviews out in the open, because it is out in the open. The publication is out in the open. So can we use this cohort of reviews to collect a sort of body of reviews, for example, to say, I tried to reproduce this graph and I couldn't in the paper. So you want to be able to, or you want to be able to accumulate sort of this community's knowledge, but also accumulate the community's commentary and discussion, linking of a paper that they read with the previous paper that was written by the author and so on. So you build up another layer of discussion over the top of the papers, which is the discourse, the community discourse. And that layer has to be first class, it has to be citable, it has to be incentivized to be able to create it, it has to be, to some extent, quality managed, and it has to be outside of just the single platform of one publisher and one journal. Community, so you'll be able to open out to not just a limited small number of reviewers, where we have trouble getting reviewers for journals and getting the time from reviewers for journals. They don't have time to spend, say, a great deal on trying to, say, example, replicate or check every kind of component of the paper. Have we got the right cell lines? Have they actually really got the reagents properly described and so on? And as soon as you put it out into post-publication peer review, people then they're not reviewing it in order to be able to accept it, they're reviewing it to use it. And that's when you find out that you get this better quality of discussion. And we'd also see papers that were perhaps not orthodox, so they don't fit into the kind of standard orthodoxy. They're maverick papers, but these maverick papers could be the ones that really make the difference. So you get a kind of broader range And also we would potentially, because we're changing the way that you receive papers into the community, you're blending together reviewing with reception of the papers by the community. You could speed up the publication activity. The publication pipeline is very slow. You put something in, it's rejected. You put something in somewhere else, it's rejected. Rejected. This is a really slow process, and this will potentially speed up the process. So there are a number of different potential benefits, but I think one of them is to do with raising the quality of the reporting in papers. So there are a number of caveats, a number of negatives, of course. One is, won't we be releasing bad papers, poor papers, noise into the system? So that also presumes that, many people who say that presume that we're just going to do a free-for-all, we're just going to briefly, technically check the paper and then push it out. And I think actually we'll end up with a hybrid system where there's some basic quality checking, some filtering before we go out into a post-publication peer review process. But there's also a cultural issue to do with the authors recognising that they will be open to feedback and criticism for their paper is not a publish and forget model anymore. Reviewers, we have to incentivise reviewers to contribute their reviews and to participate in a kind of much more active engagement with the papers that is more open. And in fact, we already do post-publication peer review massively through tweeting and blogging and so on, and in journal clubs. That's what these are all about, or in organisations like Alzheimer's Forum or PD Online, which is Parkinson's Online, where communities have formal platforms with collections of people who were experts who do this post-publication peer review on behalf of their community and post the results. So it's kind of gathering that together and crystallising it and making it archival. That's a change. And the editors have to have a cultural change as well, because their journals become fluid living things. Their issues become fluid living things. They're no longer just, I've collected it, I've reviewed it, it's out, it's edited, it's all neat and in a bow, because it isn't. It's become something that's quite dynamic. And then finally the journals, it's a bit of a shock for the journals culturally, because it's also recognising the importance of the review and the collective power of the reviews. And you could even build a whole application kind of collection of tools on top of the reviews, where you can see papers that are doing better or getting more reviews, more positive, the papers attracting more reviews. The more important it becomes, the more it will attract more reviews, more discussion. You could build a whole empire of metrics on top of that and visibility stuff. But in particular, what the big vision, which will be a massive cultural change, is collecting discussions across papers irrespective of their journal. And that's a real shock to the system of the journals, because everybody wants to have their little world. Well, they do become redundant, because once you're out, once you've gone through this publishing process, you're out and in the open, you fundamentally don't have any embargoes, and there are no restrictions. So of course we all see that there'll be journals or there'll be research that people still want to keep embargoed for commercial reasons, for example. But quite a few people use embargoes not as a not for legitimate reasons, shall we say. Particularly in my university, embargoes are really supposed to be the exception, not the rule. And some disciplines, I think, that's been a bit of a challenge. But if everybody knows the ground rules, if it's out, that's it. Then it's very clear. So I don't really see the role of embargoed papers in a post-publication review process. The big issue there, the thing that people really worry about is, will I get sued? Because I've published a paper and then there's some conclusions drawn from it, perhaps that are not sound conclusions, and then there is some concerns that, will I be at fault? Will I be to blame? Of course, this is true regardless. But if I've reviewed a paper and I draw certain conclusions and my review is open, and then this review is misinterpreted or I've made a mistake, then I will be liable. That's another issue. That's more to do with open review than it is to do with post-publication review, I would suggest. So there's some issues there. I think there are also benefits that we know that clinical trial and medical research has come under scrutiny of late for the reproducibility of its results and the soundness of its statistical power in sampling. And again, that's more of a discussion point for open data and open review and open transparent science than it is for post-publication review. So I think those are all intertwinkled issues.